Hello, everybody. Welcome to our live with Dr. Frank Lippmann. Waiting for Frank to join. Hi, everybody. Let's see. Frank, are you there? Hi. So we're going to be joined today by Dr. Frank Lippmann. He is a formidable integrative and functional medicine doctor. He's a best-selling author of 5 books, and I'm going to bring him in here. Hello, Frank. Hi, everybody. Hi, Frank. Hi,
Hi,
Dr. Lipman.
Cristina. Hi, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling much better, thanks
Good,
in part to your gracious help and support
good.
and all of your good advice. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Good to see you back in business here. You're looking good.
I never really stopped, which is
Well,
interesting.
not
Even
surprising, not surprising.
even the days we did our yoga lives, I was suffering through them silently. But it really helped me. I have to say, the distraction of work. I gave a little introduction
Good.
about you before you popped on, about your books, and being quite a impressive integrative and functional medicine doctor. And I was hoping you could explain to everybody today what functional medicine is versus integrative medicine.
Sure. Well, functional medicine, as opposed to Western medicine, is we look for the underlying cause. We look for why something's happening. In Western medicine, if you've got heartburn, you've got a symptom, you take a drug to suppress it. In functional medicine, we look to see why you have the symptom. It's a pointer to some imbalance. The difference between functional medicine and integrative medicine is sort of semantics. Functional medicine is an operating system. Integrative medicine, you learn to a little bit of acupuncture, maybe herbal medicine, meditation, and you just integrate all different therapies together. Functional medicine actually gives you an operating system, a real way of thinking about how to treat the underlying problems. So it's a little bit different, but big overlaps.
You grew up in South Africa.
I did.
And
You
you
see behind
spent,
me, yeah.
yeah, we have an international audience here today, which is so nice. And you spent 18 months working at clinics in the bush. And that's when you became familiar with more traditional healing and something called sangomas. Is that right? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Sangomas,
Sangomas.
traditional healers.
Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, Sangoma is just a traditional healer. That's a traditional healer in the African medicine tradition. Now, when I was exposed to them, I mean, as early on in my career, I thought it was, quackery. I was just fascinated by the sociological, the context rather than the medical aspect of it. But I did notice sometimes when we couldn't help the patients in the hospitals, because then I was an intern in the biggest hospital actually in Africa. And when we couldn't help them, the patients, the family used to call in the Sangoma, the traditional healer. And sometimes they helped. So, it sort of opened my eyes to another way of looking at it. And then when I went to work in the bush, I got exposed to more Sangomas. And I was just fascinated culturally more than medically by what they did and what was going on. Because, I was young and interested in all these things in those days.
And you've studied nutrition, acupuncture, Chinese
Yeah,
medicine, herbal medicine, functional medicine, as we just talked about, biofeedback, meditation, yoga. I mean, you have really have a grasp on basically just about every natural treatment of in the holistic world.
well, I started a long time ago. I started in the 80s. This is in those days, I just went to learn with whoever would teach me, to be quite honest. So whatever I thought could help, I just went on to study.
And within your books, gut health is so important
Yep.
Why is protecting the gut health, the gut right now, most important?
Well, you got to remember the gut is that internal barrier between you and the external world. It's like the skin internally. And that's why we have so much of 70% of our immune system is actually around the gut, which makes sense because all the food that we put in or everything we drink has to come into contact with your body, and your body has to protect it from these sort of external antigens that you're being exposed to. So it's important to have a healthy gut, because if you don't have a healthy gut, your immune system can get triggered. And if you don't have a healthy gut, it can cause an imbalance in the bugs in your gut, what we call the microbiome, which can then damage the lining of the gut. And that lining, which is very thin, if that gets damaged or the tight-knit cells are not as tight-knit anymore, breakdown of food products can go through and into the bloodstream and cause chronic inflammation all over, which is probably the commonest cause of chronic inflammation.
So you and I were talking about the importance of the host. You know, Eastern medicine treats, since most health problems are multifactorial, and you explained to me what that's all about, it's most important to look at the host, meaning your body, and what's going on within your body, versus what Western medicine does, which is look at the actual cause, the virus itself, and a treatment for that. Why is the host, the body, and looking at what's going on within the body and the gut, for example, paramount right now?
Well, it's actually paramount now in COVID-19 because Western medicine tends to look at the pathogen. And if it's a bacteria, we can often come up with an antibiotic which will kill the bacteria. But when it comes to a virus, we don't really have that many tools to actually kill the virus. So killing the pathogen or that model is not particularly helpful for something like COVID-19. You know, when someone's acutely ill in crisis care, yes, you need to go to the hospital and you can try get treatment, but it's very difficult to kill a virus. But the virus has to take hold in a host. The virus has to take hold in a person, and how strong your immune system is and what type of response you mount to that viral onslaught or whatever trauma comes into your body is key. And functional medicine, Chinese medicine, is all about strengthening the host, about regulating your immune system, about strengthening you so you can take care of whatever comes at you, a virus being a perfect example.
Now, back to the gut. Someone is asking, what would be the most important thing we can do right now for our gut?
Well, you know, probably the most important thing for your gut is to avoid sugar and processed foods, because that's going to negatively affect your microbiome. Your microbiome is this collection of trillions of bacteria that you have in your gut, which is like an organ system. So apart from avoiding foods like sugar and processed foods that can cause imbalances in the microbiome, you want to feed those good bacteria as well. And the best thing to feed those good bacteria is fiber. So what we call prebiotics, food that we don't digest. So for instance, the stalks and the stems, your cousin Amelie gave me that term actually when my last book I wrote with Amelie, who I adore and is actually brilliant. She came up with,
she's our Purist Wellness editor too.
She's fantastic. I love Amelie. I think she's incredibly smart. She's lovely. Anyway, she came up with this term, eat the stalks and the stems. So instead of cutting away the asparagus stalk or the broccoli stalk, you eat it. That's a fibrous part of the vegetable that your body doesn't digest. And because you don't digest it, it gets down to the large intestine and it feeds those good bacteria. So probably one of the most important things you can do is eat the stalks and stems of your vegetables.
Do they offer the pre or the probiotic element?
They offer the prebiotics. So that's the prebiotic. The probiotic are the fermented foods like kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir. Those are all probiotics. Those all have bacteria. But you've got to feed those bacteria. You've got to fertilize the soil. So the prebiotics feed those good bacteria.
And if you can't get supplements, a pre or probiotic supplement finding it in natural foods, the stems and the stalks, for example, of the vegetables you're cooking is so important. But can you explain the difference between the the pre and the probiotic?
Sure. So think of the probiotics as the soil and the prebiotics as the fertilizer. The prebiotics feed the probiotics. The prebiotics are the fiber that the probiotics need to flourish. So the prebiotics feed, most of your bacteria in your gut are good bacteria. We have this idea of bacteria being negative, but, a lot of the bacteria, most of them are actually important and playing an important function in how you digest your food, even the hormones you make. They have multiple functions. So it's very important to feed them good food. So when you think of feeding yourself, you've got to think of feeding your bugs in your gut as well.
So a lot of people are asking questions about specific conditions.
Mm-hmm. That's fine. Let's go.
Could you ready? Okay. So someone's asking about heartburn. What are the best remedies for heartburn?
Well, so the way you need to look at heartburn is telling you that something is off, either with what you're eating or your digestion. So heartburn, like any other symptom, is a pointer to some imbalance. So instead of just taking something to quell the heartburn, the first thing you need to do is to look to see why you have the heartburn. So you've got to see what foods could you be eating that could be causing heartburn. Do you have an imbalance in your gut bacteria that we are talking about that could actually cause the heartburn? Do you have enough hydrochloric acid or even digestive enzymes to process your food? And if you don't have enough hydrochloric acid, which, Western medicine actually suppresses that, but not having enough hydrochloric acid, especially when you're older, can cause heartburn too. So the first step is to look to see why you have the heartburn. But then there are some natural remedies that can help. Deglycinated licorice can be very helpful. Mastic gum, aloe vera, all these things can be helpful. But ultimately, you always need to look to see why you have the heartburn. The heartburn is telling you something is off. It's like if you're driving your car and the oil light goes on, you don't put a Band-Aid over the oil light. You see why the oil light went on. Heartburn is your oil light going on.
Okay. And if you have certain conditions like SIBO or Hashimoto's, are you more susceptible to COVID? How will that compromise your immune system if you get coronavirus?
Well, so Hashimoto's, it's complicated because, we got to think of the immune system of, you want a well-regulated immune system. You don't really necessarily want to boost it or make it overreact or underreact. So autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's is a little bit of an overreaction of the autoimmune of the immune system, but it's not really necessarily a problem with COVID-19. Now, SIBO may actually be more of a problem because it is affecting your gut, and you've got this imbalance. SIBO means small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So that overgrowth could affect your immune system because, as I said, 70% of your immune system is there. So SIBO is probably more of an issue, and not necessarily a major issue, but more of an issue than Hashimoto's for COVID.
What about fibromyalgia?
Well, once again, fibromyalgia is just a name. In Western medicine, we love giving names to something. Giving a name to something doesn't necessarily tell us what the problem is. Fibromyalgia, we need to see why do you have those symptoms. So fibromyalgia often has to do with low thyroid function. It could be a number of different factors. You mentioned multifactorial earlier. So, fibromyalgia may have many different underlying issues that you need to address that present as fibromyalgia. So if someone has fibromyalgia, it's just telling me that their body's not functioning optimally, and you've got to improve the function of the body so they'll be able to deal with viruses or whatever.
And what about Graves' disease and menopause?
Well, Graves' disease is sort of the opposite of autoimmune disease, except you have a hyper response as opposed to a hypo response to thyroid. So it's not necessarily a problem with COVID-19. But any autoimmune disease, Hashimoto's, Graves', I think there are things that we do in functional medicine to try optimize function and try regulate the immune system. So that's a different story, or a similar story. In terms of menopause, menopause is a tricky thing, because during, or especially as you're going through menopause, you tend to be more prone to different issues. So menopause you may be a little bit more prone, but ultimately with COVID, if you can optimize your sugar dysregulation, you can optimize your immune system, menopause does not necessarily have to be a problem. None of these issues you've mentioned necessarily have to be a problem. You've got to do the same things. You've got to cut out the crap that you're eating. You've got to make sure that you're sleeping properly. You've got to move your body. You've got to deal with the stress. So we've got to deal with all those underlying issues that could make the menopause worse than it may need to be. And sometimes you may need hormones.
So someone said they can have raw vegetables, so they can eat the stems and the stalks to create the prebiotic benefits in their system. Does apple cider vinegar help?
So apple cider vinegar is like we talked earlier, when we have a weak digestion and not enough hydrochloric acid. So apple cider vinegar stimulates your body's own digestive juices. So yes, it can actually help. Eating some Swedish bitters before you eat, like having a slug of that, can help. But yes, a tablespoon or two of apple cider vinegar before you eat actually can help. But remember, we're talking about the parts of the vegetables that you don't necessarily want to digest. So because you want it to get down to your gut where the bacteria are digesting it. So you don't necessarily have to be able to digest the vegetables.
You mentioned that eliminating bad foods, processed foods, in addition to, things, trying to alleviate stress, get better sleep, all of that helps the host, which is your body. But while we're in quarantine, we're prone to bad habits like cravings, for example.
Yep.
How do we control, what's the best way to curb your cravings? And I'm referring to an article on your website, The 9 Ways to Curb Carb Cravings.
Well, unfortunately, what happens in situations like this, when we're anxious and there's a lot of fear and we see what's going on around us, we tend to go for our comfort foods. Comfort foods tend to be high in sugar and high in carbs. So, the best way is to, first of all, if you can, I would say to everyone, you've got to be kind to yourself. These are tough times, and don't come down on yourself if you're eating too much crap and too many carbs. You just need to try and do better. So be kind to yourself. Self-compassion is probably more important for your immune system than anything else. But try and be present and be aware of why you're eating the carbs. So I often suggest, if you crowd out the crappy carbs with good foods like vegetables, or good sources of protein, even animal protein, well-sourced animal protein, I don't have a problem with. But if you crowd out the carbs with healthier food, that can help. Having something to drink, a glass of water, some seltzer water. Sometimes your perception of hunger is actually you're just thirsty. So having something to drink can help. Even a cup of coffee, going for a walk. Just try and distract yourself. But first thing to do, be kind to yourself. Second thing, be aware of what's going on. Are you eating because you're actually hungry, or are you eating for an emotional reason?
So a couple places where you can find Frank's articles on all of these topics are on his website, drfranklipman.com. And also, did I get that right?
And at Purist, yeah.
And also thepuristonline.com. And you just wrote a piece for me, which I just love, about tending to your internal garden. And can you just talk quickly about how to reset your health while you're in quarantine, and how to switch to good foods? You just mentioned, favoring the vegetables over the carbs, but, going grocery shopping is about the only way we can leave our homes. It's the only essential thing that we can do right now. And, if you're only going once a week, right, to the grocery store, how can you reset your whole sort of thinking and shopping experience and in turn that will help you resetting your health, and why now is the right time to do this?
Yeah, I think the food may be a little bit more difficult than all the other factors that you can deal with. I mean, I think help you sleep, stress, or moving, all of that can be a bit easy. Food may be a little bit more difficult, but what I do and what I tell most of my patients and everyone I speak to is just try to buy as many vegetables as possible. And I'm a big fan of low carb eating, especially in times like this, because we are now seeing that the comorbidities or people who have bigger problems with COVID-19 tend to be people with obesity, diabetes, hypertension, what I would call metabolic ill health or sugar dysregulation. So we want to keep the sugars and the crappy carbs down to, or as limited as possible within reason. So try buy as many vegetables as possible. So we eat tons of salad here. And then we have organic chicken, and we have grass-fed meat, and we have lots of eggs, and we have protein powders, and fish, a lot of fish. So that's how we eat, basically protein and vegetables as much as possible. We just buy tons of vegetables and fill up on vegetables. And you can get the vegetables fairly easily.
Why, we talked about this, we've talked about this so many times, that naturalist who is also a farmer, Wendell Berry, and he said that people are fed by the food industry, which pays no attention to health, and are treated by a health industry that pays no attention to food. Why is no one making a fuss over our food industry in America right now?
Well, first of all, yeah, that's my favorite quote. And I do think the food industry is complicit here. I think the food industry needs to really look at what's going on, because if you look at the problems we're having with COVID-19, the mortality rate in Black and Hispanic communities are so large, not because they're Black or Hispanic, but because they tend to be poor and they're eating this cheap crap, basically. So the food
processed
industry,
food.
Yeah, ultra processed food. So the food industry is making large profits by creating ill health in society. And I think now is the time to reevaluate this and to reevaluate who we get our food from and who to support in the food industry. The food industry needs to take some responsibility for the type of food that they are feeding us. They need to take some responsibility for the health of the nation, the health of society. This is a really, really important point, and what I really want to focus a lot of attention to on now, because we have, we talked earlier about the host. Why is the host so important? If you're going to feed the host this unhealthy food, obviously we're going to be more prone to all sorts of comorbidities, as they call. So we have the pandemic of the virus, but we also have a pandemic of ill health in this country, which is probably mostly related to the food industry. So we have to change that. And at the same time, there's an underlying issue of climate change. Why do these viruses, come about? That's because, how we destroy the natural habitat, global warming, factory farming, concentrated animal factory operations. So all of these things we need to reevaluate the way we see ourselves in the context of the bigger world. We as humans are microcosms of the macrocosm. We've got to look at the big picture. It's not only our immune systems that have been affected. The society's immune system has been affected. The world's immune system is being eroded. So we've got to see, how do we build up our own personal immune systems? How do we build up the immune system of the society? That means the economy, the food industry, the government, and then how do we build the immune system of the planet? So I think we need to start reevaluating all of this.
Someone asked about ulcerative colitis.
Yeah. So ulcerative colitis is an inflammatory bowel disease, which is also an autoimmune problem. It tends to affect the distal, the latter part of the intestines. So diet sometimes is less of an issue than, for instance, Crohn's, which affects the intestines high up. But it is an autoimmune problem, and it is an inflammatory bowel disease. So you need to look at your diet. Probiotics can be extremely helpful here. There's a great tip for this. You can actually, for ulcerative colitis, apart from probiotics and diet, there's something called butyric acid, which you can actually get made up as enemas by a compounding pharmacist. So you can actually get butyrate or butyric acid orally as well. And that can often be helpful too.
So how can an asthmatic with controlled asthma best care for themselves in this COVID environment?
Right. So asthmatics need to be a little bit more careful because, COVID often affects the lungs. So breathing exercises are important. I'm a huge, huge fan, as you know, of NAC, which is N-acetylcysteine. N-acetylcysteine is not only a precursor to glutathione, which is your major antioxidant, but it's also good for the lungs and respiratory system. So I tend to recommend NAC and another supplement called Quercetin to all my patients now with this COVID, but especially to asthmatics. Quercetin is a nutrient that is harder to get in food, but you can get it in some fruits and vegetables in the skins. But Quercetin and NAC would be two supplements that I would recommend.
Why is quercetin helpful right now?
Well, quercetin actually has major anti-inflammatory effects, and quercetin also can have antiviral effects. Quercetin is a very, very interesting nutrient. It's got multiple effects in the body, and I have become a huge fan of it because it works on so many different mechanisms in the body. So it's it's good for allergies. It's good for the immune system. It's good as an anti-inflammatory. It's one of those nutrients that I take every day now.
So you wrote a piece for us on the road to wellness on thepuristonline.com, where you address the importance of sleep. How can everyone's struggling right now with anxiety and sleeplessness and fatigue, especially if you've gone through coronavirus, which I did, and the fatigue was very intense, and now I'm dealing with sleeplessness. What are your suggestions for getting better sleep right now?
Yeah, so sleep is interesting. I'm actually writing a book on it. Sleep also is, you've got to see, sleep is like a symptom of some underlying imbalance too. It's often what you're doing during the day. So it could be habits like not getting enough sunlight during the day could be a factor. Going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time is probably the most important thing you can do. You wanted to get it onto a regular rhythm. Sleep is a rhythm. Nutrition can be really important with sleep. Too much sugar can be a problem. Even too many spicy foods or having a large meal at night is a problem, because most of your food you should have your biggest meal at lunchtime, because that's best for your digestive rhythm.
And also helps with acid reflux and heartburn, correct?
Absolutely. And then, menopause is hormones can affect sleep in a big way. Menopause.
I hope I'm not going through that yet.
Somehow balance the hormonal issues as well.
So can you speak a little bit about co-infections? I had a sinus infection or a sinus cold coupled with coronavirus, as did Chris, as did my son. And when I tested negative, I continued having this sinus issue for another week. And I asked my doctor about it, who said that I most likely have a co-infection. So there's that issue of getting something simultaneously as corona, and then there's the issue of what if you have Lyme disease, for example, and you get corona? People are asking about that.
You're talking about the multi, yeah. So you're talking about these multifactorial. Once you have Lyme's disease, it takes a toll on your immune system, and because there's often some low-grade inflammation going on. So someone like you, because of the Lyme disease, just needs to take extra care of yourself. So it's even more important how you sleep, how you eat, how you deal with the stress, how you move your body. So these are just issues that there's nothing you can do about it. You've had the Lyme disease. You are just going to be more prone to getting co-infections or some other issues, and you just got to take better care of yourself. So hopefully you'll start listening to me now.
I'm doing the best I can. The sleep is tough.
Yes, well,
it's the clock is off. I'm going to bed too late.
Yeah,
I think that's a big part of it.
A huge part. You got to, I mean, now's the time to get into a rhythm, a regular rhythm, going to bed earlier.
So I wanted to ask you about the clock, the body clock, that you talk about in one of your books. And how do electronics affect that body clock?
Right. So you got to see the clock as, you know, as during the day you have light and certain hormones are released, and at night your body starts releasing melatonin, which is your primary sleep hormone. And melatonin is a way of telling your body to just chill out, slow down, and get ready for sleep. If you have too much artificial light, or you're looking at electronics, you're suppressing your body's own production of melatonin. So your body doesn't learn how to switch off and how to eventually go to sleep, because melatonin is basically not only the sleep hormone, it's telling your body just to slow down and chill out and switch off. So having that, you know, in the old days when our bodies were developed, we didn't have artificial lighting. It was, you know, it was light during the day, and when it just got dark, your body got used to that cycle of being dark at night. So artificial lighting is tricking your body, and these electronics are tricking your body to think that it's daytime. So your melatonin doesn't get, either it gets suppressed or it doesn't start getting released. So it's really important to like dim the lights, get off the electronics, because you don't want to suppress your body's melatonin production.
And what's your recommended time frame? An hour before bedtime? Shut everything down?
2 hours.
2 hours before bedtime.
Yeah.
Well, that is tough. I will try to do that with my kids, but it's going to be tough.
That's tough, but you know what? You feel so much better. You know, it's
You're
actually,
right.
it's interesting now because we have a little grandson here now. So I always used to go to bed earlier, but now I'm
Congratulations.
going to bed even earlier and waking up earlier, and I love it. I feel great going to bed. You know, we sometimes go to bed at 8:30. It's fantastic.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So someone's asking, should we supplement with a daily probiotic on top of eating the right food?
Probably I do. You know, the problem with a probiotic, you're really just not sure because everyone's microbiome is a little bit different. But I do think in a time like this, apart from eating fermented foods and the prebiotics, the stalks and the stems, and the other prebiotic foods are asparagus, garlic, onion, leeks are also prebiotic foods. Yeah, I think it's probably not a bad idea to take a probiotic now too, just because the gut is so key to your immune health and your health in general.
And for those who have been going through illness and taking antibiotics.
Take antibiotics. They are sensitive to those antibiotics. So you are going to need to replace those antibiotics. You know, the only I mean, I love
What kind of supplements should you take?
What kind of supplements do you want? Have you got another half an hour?
Yeah, what kind should we take?
Well, you know, I mentioned
After
NAC
a whole round
and
of antibiotics
quercetin are two important ones. Vitamin D is key because, you know, they found, their study just came out, that people with low vitamin D levels also are more predisposed to having a harder time with COVID-19. So quercetin, NAC, vitamin D, zinc can be helpful. A probiotic can be helpful. What else do I take? And I'm a big fan of mushroom extracts.
Mushroom extracts, why?
Because mushroom extracts also can help prime the immune system. We're looking at priming the immune system rather than boosting it. You don't want it to overreact and you don't want it to underreact. And mushrooms can help that.
We talked about apple cider vinegar earlier, so you can go back to the video, which will be up for 24 hours following this conversation. People are asking about lupus.
Yeah, lupus is another autoimmune disease. if your lupus is under control, just because you have an autoimmune problem does not necessarily mean that you're going to have a harder time with COVID. It's a different mechanism. I think you need to be a little bit more careful. But, you know, I deal a lot with autoimmune problems in my practice. I think there is a healthier way of dealing with autoimmune problems than just suppressing it with the biologics that we do in Western medicine. So I think any autoimmune disease, most autoimmune disease, you've got to look at the gut. The gut is often a problem. Leaky gut is often a problem with autoimmune disease. So you've got to look at the whole picture, but the gut in particular.
What about a bloating stomach?
Yes, a bloating stomach is telling you something's off in your digestion. So why are you getting bloated? Do you have the SIBO? Do you have an imbalance in the gut bacteria? Do you not have enough hydrochloric acid or digestive enzymes? Do you have foods that are triggering the bloating? So you've got to look at all these. What's the cause of the bloating? So that's, you know, this is what we do in functional medicine. We look to see, why does someone have bloating? Why does someone have heartburn? Why does someone have the autoimmune disease? That's the idea, to sort of look to see what are the underlying factors that are triggering these problems.
What about IBS?
Well, IBS is just a name for a bowel that's not working properly. So IBS could be caused by SIBO. It could be caused by not having enough digestive juices. It could be caused by a leaky gut. So IBS could be caused by food sensitivities. So IBS is just a name for your gut's not working as well as it should. It's a meaningless name.
EOE.
EOE. Eosinophilic esophagitis. That is a little bit trickier, guys. But once again, you need to see, eosinophilic esophagitis means you are it's an allergic response to something. So it's a little bit harder than almost all these other problems you've mentioned. But there are ways of dealing. The diet is important. Some supplements can help. But eosinophilic esophagitis can be a tricky problem to treat, but not in. Am I back? I know I got poor connection.
You're back. You're back.
Okay.
You're back. We lost you for a minute. And what about a gallbladder issue?
Well, once again, gallbladder is trickier. Gallbladder depends if it's a big stone or not. So it all depends what's causing the gallbladder issue. There are some, as we talked about hydrochloric acid, there's some type of digestive enzymes that can help that. You can sometimes, if the gallbladders are very small, can help down. So it's all about the other factors, but so once again, all depends what's causing the gallbladder issue.
And myasthenia gravis. Yeah, myasthenia gravis.
That's a tough one, but that's also an autoimmune problem. I don't have much experience with myasthenia gravis, to be quite honest. So I'm not sure I can. Questions, I've seen a good number, and we can help most of them. Myasthenia gravis is a trickier problem.
Do you have a favorite prebiotic supplement to take?
Yeah, I mean, I think, once again, I try to get it in foods, but most fibers, you look for arabogalactosides, inulin. Just look for a prebiotic or prebiotic that has chicory root, inulin, or fructooligosaccharides, or arabogalactanoids, sides.
Jesus, I got to write all this down. Chicory root,
inulin, fructooligosaccharides. What else do you see in prebiotic supplements? I tend to get it from food. I know my wife takes and loves the Activated U morning complete, because it's got prebiotics, probiotics, adaptogens. It's a great formula. I'm biased because I helped formulate it, but I know she swears by it. But prebiotics you can get in food.
People say having warm water with lemon purifies the liver. Do you believe that?
Well, I missed that.
Frank? Uh, People say
Yes.
having warm water with lemon purifies the liver. Do you believe that? Oh, look, you have one of
Um,
Kelly's mugs there.
is that right?
That's the Columbia Protocol,
Oh, okay.
Mental Health Initiative.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know how I got it, but it's
I
I may have
spotted
got it
it.
at a purist thing, hey? I
Yeah,
think I
yes.
probably did.
So purifying the liver,
Yeah,
very
I mean,
interesting thing right now, especially when you need to shed the viral die off after a sickness,
yeah.
right?
Listen, I don't have a problem. If anything can help, that's fine. I'm not sure it does a major, I'm more about intermittent fasting, which we probably should have spoken about with carb cravings. I try and personally, I try only eat within like an 8 hour restricted time period. And with carb cravings, we for most people, we try to get them to also do that instead of snacking all day. So I tend, I'm not against the lemon water in the first thing in the morning. Some people swear by it. I'm not. I don't know. I'm not against it. It may help. I think there are more powerful ways of activating the liver and stimulating the liver. But
What
little
about
remedies
celery
like that are
juice?
great.
Celery juice.
Yeah, once again, people swear by celery juice. It definitely uh, got the rounds. Everyone is doing celery juice. My biggest concern was celery juice, and a lot of people told me it helped them. So, I can't negate that. My biggest problem with celery juice was it can be high in sugar, especially if you're drinking, large cups of it. So I'm not a major
I
fan,
never
but
knew that.
but a lot of people swear by it. So I don't discount anything. If people are being helped by something, even if it's psychological, that's fine. If it's pretty benign, I'm no problem with
But
me.
you're also giving yourself the nutrients provided in a
In
vegetable. That
Sure,
is
yeah. I don't think.
imperative to your system right now.
Yeah, I don't think celery juice is a problem. I still can't understand why it's given as a cure-all for everything. But too many people have told me it's helped them. That there's got to be something there. I'm just a little bit of a skeptic. That's all.
Someone's asking about Manuka honey. I take it every day. I think it's a natural antibiotic, the Manuka
Yep.
honey in particular. So I think it's a good time to be taking that.
Yeah, just don't have too much sugar. But interestingly enough, when I was working in South Africa, we put honey on wounds because it was an antibiotic. We used to actually dress wounds with honey, and it
Oh,
was incredibly effective because we didn't have, especially in the bush, there was not that much, we didn't have that many medicines, or we had, but it was limited sometimes. And that's where I learned to dress wounds with honey, and I saw how effective it was. So honey is very interesting, especially Manuka honey. Yeah, just watch the
so
sugar.
watch the sugar. So when people are looking for functional medicine experts, where do you suggest they look for? Is there a
Yeah,
particular
right. Yeah.
guide
Uh,
online that they can
um,
access? Right here, Dr.
yeah,
Frank Lippmann.
there's a functional. Just
Can
look here.
people reach
But
out to
there's
you
a,
directly through your website?
yeah, absolutely. I'm doing telemedicine now. I'm seeing people from all over the world, and I'm loving it. But
That's
you
great.
can go to my website drfranklipman.com, and there'll be a link to where you can make an appointment. But you can go to functionalmedicine.org. There is a functional medicine website where they have functional medicine doctors in your area. I think things have changed with COVID-19. More of us are doing telemedicine. It's just the reality now. I'm doing more and more telemedicine, and I'm loving it. We work with Zoom, and I have my health coach with us, and we can sort of do what I'm doing in my office. So this is a new world, and it's a new age.
Can we talk about water for a second? I'm seeing a
Sure.
lot of questions about water, alkaline water, hydrogen water. water with uh, gas, like Pellegrino. What is your theory on all of these waters?
Well, my biggest theory is if you can purify your water, it's, if you can get if you don't have a filter, I mean, I'm a big fan of water filters because the problem, I'm just a big fan of drinking regular water. The problem with a lot of water, there can be chemicals in the water. So getting a water filter is probably the most important, more important than hydrogen water and alkaline water. And I'm a big fan of sparkling water. I just like sparkling water. I don't think it's bad for you. I don't think there's an issue there. So just plain water is great. I'm not sure about hydrogen water, alkaline. Some people swear by alkaline water. I like the idea of it. I'm not convinced, but if you want to
Does it really lower the acid content in your
don't know if it
system?
makes a big difference. I'm not convinced. I'm not against. Once again, it's one of those things I'm not against, but I'm not a major advocate for. If you want to do it, I don't think it's bad for you, and it may be good for you. I'm a huge fan of water. I think we need to drink more water than most of us drink, and filtering your water is probably the most important.
So hydration of filtered water, water free of
Exactly.
chemicals and heavy metals and things like that. That's why
Exactly.
filtering the water is so important.
Exactly.
Someone's asking about herbal teas.
Love
They
herbal
said
tea.
they help me, and yes, everything in moderation and stay away from the sweet stuff. Would you say that is a good motto?
No,
Yes.
everything in moderation may not be a good motto because, I'll use myself as an example. I was eating everything in moderation. I was eating lots of grains. I was sort of vegetarian, lots of fruit, and I became pre-diabetic. So that was 10 years ago. So I had to cut out the sugar. So everything in moderation may work for some people, but for certain people, even sugar in moderation may be a problem. Even too many grains, if you've got an autoimmune problem, eating certain grains, even in moderation, may be a problem. So eating everything in moderation, if you're healthy and it's working for you, that's fine. You've got to listen to your body, folks. Everyone's a little bit different. There's no one way for everyone. So everything in moderation may work for someone, but may do harm to the next person.
You mentioned earlier about taking supplements is a good idea right now. What are the best supplements to take every day? What vitamins?
Well, in this day and age, or generally?
Right now.
Right now, well, I'm vitamin D, quercetin, NAC, a probiotic, mushroom extracts, maybe some vitamin C, and some zinc. Some combination of those, because they all work a little bit differently. I personally take vitamin D every day. I take quercetin, I take NAC, and I take my mushrooms. Those are my basics. Then often, and I take a probiotic. Sometimes I'll add a multi or fish oil or some zinc. But those are the ones that I take every day.
And in terms of getting those same nutrients in your food and the prebiotic effect of stems and stalks, do you recommend cooking them or eating them raw? And if so, when you're talking about stems and stalks, you're talking about when you cut up your asparagus, cutting up the whole stem as well.
Exactly. You can cook them because even when you cook them, there's still going to be fiber. Don't overcook them. Cook them a little bit. There's still going to be that fiber. The thing about the prebiotics, it's the fiber that your body doesn't digest. Now, if you cook it a little bit, it's not, it's maybe a little bit digested, but it's still going to get down to your large intestine where it's going to feed the good bacteria. So you can cook them, but don't overcook them. Cook them a little bit is fine.
Can you freeze fresh vegetables?
Yes. So trying to get your vegetables, eating them fresh is best. Next best is frozen. Frozen is also good. And then next best would be canned, but fresh or frozen is generally fine.
And let's just mention your website again for articles and also to schedule anything with Dr. Frank Lippmann. It's Dr. Dr. Frank Lippmann, Lipman.com. And you can also read more of Dr. Frank Lippmann's articles on thepuristonline.com. So, is the nutrient quality in frozen veggies lower than fresh veggies? Now, you just talked about that, so we'll skip
Well,
that.
well, maybe a little bit, but probably not significantly. I'm all for, let's get practical here. So ideally, it's probably a little bit, but even fresh vegetables, if they're coming from the other side of the country, may lose some nutrient density in the travel when they pick. So there are many factors that are going to affect the nutrient density of vegetables. So something that's picked at the right time and frozen immediately may actually have more nutrients than some vegetable that's not picked at the right time and that has to be transported across the country. So a frozen vegetable is not necessarily less nutrient dense than a fresh vegetable. But ideally, if you can get vegetables from local farmers, that's obviously always the best place to be.
Ideal.
Yeah.
So we talked a little bit about how intermittent fasting can help with your carb cravings. What about other diets like keto, and also what is your recommendation for the intermittent fasting?
Okay, so keto diet is just more of an extreme of what I do, which is an extremely low carb diet and a lot of fat. So I'm not against the keto diet. I think it's very difficult for a lot of people, and it may not be necessary for a lot of people. I'm not against it. I've seen incredible results with people doing keto diets. I tend to cycle people on and off them. They don't stay on them for long term. So I don't see keto diet as a long-term thing, but although some people thrive on it long-term. So that's my take on the keto diet. In terms of intermittent fasting, I think you've got to train your body to get used to it. So I now tend to eat for 8 hours. So we'll have supper at 5:36. I'm embarrassed to say. We eat around the baby. And then I will not eat after 6:30 until 10:30, 11 o'clock the next morning. So I wait 16 hours. Now, you got to get used to that. You got to build yourself up. So I would start with 12 hours, then go to 14 hours. And if you can go to 16 hours, that's great. That's great. And you don't have to do it every day. I tend to do it most days, but try to do it once a week, then twice a week, then 3 times a week. And your body gets used to it. I just don't get hungry anymore. It's like really interesting how
Really?
your body gets trained. I mean, I went for a ride this morning, and I think I hadn't eaten for at least 18 hours, and I wasn't even hungry. So your body does get used to it.
And why is intermittent fasting important about the cellular renewal? Can you just mention that?
Exactly. So intermittent fasting does a number of things. Apart from help regulate your blood sugar and insulin and can help you lose weight and help you get metabolically healthy, but also after about 16 hours of fasting, your body's own self-cleaning mechanisms kick in. It's called autophagy. So once you haven't been eating for a certain amount of time, it's like a minor stress on your body. It's something called hormesis. That's a technical term. And hormesis triggers not only your longevity genes. So I'm 65. I want to be healthy at 85, 95.
Mm-hmm.
I want to stay healthy for a long time. So not only does the autophagy, the long period of not eating, trigger your longevity genes, but it triggers these self-cleaning mechanisms in the body.
So the good cells are eating the bad cells. That's the process of autophagy?
Exactly. So the way you got to think of autophagy is if you have a party, you have a lot of parties, and if you just left if you just left the mess for overnight and you came the next morning and you didn't clean it, and the next day you had another party, the mess would just build up and build up. So you want your self-cleaning mechanisms in your body to keep being renewed and to work efficiently. By fasting, you're making it work more efficiently.
And if you haven't done that before, what is your recommendation for a first-timer?
I would start with 12 hours and see how you do, and then go to 14.
And best to, so eat dinner early, and then it starts.
So here's a term that
So the overnight qualifies as part of those hours.
cousin Amelie came up with in our book, which is a wonderful book. Well, we should plug this book that I wrote with Amelie called How to Be Well. It's a really excellent book. It's like a primer for these times. Amelie,
by the way, is my cousin, and she helps Frank write his books, and she is also our Purist Wellness editor, and has a brilliant mind, and she's a fantastic writer.
So she came up with this term, eat dinner earlier and breakfast later, which is a simple way of what you need to do. So you eat dinner earlier. So instead of eating dinner at 10 o'clock, eat it at 8 o'clock. And let's say you're done by 8:30. Wait till 8:30, 9 o'clock the next morning. And then the next day, try go longer and longer until you get to 14, 15, 16 hours and see how you do. Now, it's, you know, for young women.
Well, hence the term break fast.
Yeah, exactly. Break fast. It's not breakfast just means break the fast whenever, you know, so my breaking of the fast is later. Now, if you're young and you're trying to get pregnant, or you are pregnant and you an athlete and you need more, it may not be the right thing for you, but for us old farts, it's fantastic. Or you want to lose weight, or you want to get healthy and you don't have any contraindications, it's a wonderful thing to do. It's a great tool.
Someone says I eat a lot of beans now, and canned beans, especially during this time. That's what's available, and that's what's being given out at, for example, all the food pantries.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
So beans are interesting. So if you have a really bad carb problem, beans may not be the best thing, but beans actually are great for your microbiome too. So I'm not actually necessarily against beans, to be quite honest. And if that's what people are getting, that's a good thing to eat.
So let's talk about fruit. Anthony Williams, the medical medium, talks about blueberries being one of the top 5 things you have to eat every day, besides walnuts and a few other things, because of the antioxidant effect of a blueberry. What about other fruits like raspberries, and what about the idea of freezing them too?
Okay, so all berries are my favorite fruits. They're the lowest sugar fruits, and I'm not a big fruit eater anymore, although I love fruit. I grew up eating all fruit, and you know, here in the summer you get delicious fruit, so I'll have a little bit more. But for the most part, the main fruit I eat are berries. So all berries are good. Blueberries are really good, but so are strawberries and raspberries. Berries are generally good. You can freeze them. You know, you may lose some nutrient density, but you may not too, because it depends where they're coming from. So frozen berries and fresh berries are my favorite fruits. Then apples especially green apples, may not be as high in sugar as, let's say, bananas are particularly high. Pineapples, mangoes, or high sugar fruits. So I just don't recommend eating too many high sugar fruits. If you're going to eat fruits, eat berries for the most part.
Thank you. Oh, wow. So many compliments for you, Dr. Lippman. Is a plant-based or vegan regimen better for women who are going through menopause right now?
I don't think so. Now, everyone's a little bit different. Now, I have some vegans who do well. Most vegans have a hard. My experience with menopausal women has been at a low sugar diet. It works best for most women going through menopause. Now, I have some menopausal women who are vegan and have done well, but I think sugar and eating crap is the biggest thing in menopause. And unfortunately, a lot of vegans eat a lot of vegan junk food, which is high in sugar. So if you're a healthy vegan or a healthy vegetarian, healthy plant-based is great. I'm all for it. And in fact, as you get older, guys, including me, I've cut back on my animal protein, because too much animal protein is actually not good for your longevity genes. So cutting back on the animal protein as we get older is a good idea, but low sugar is probably the most important thing to do during menopause.
So if you're doing all these things, eating healthy, minimal animal fats, whole foods, fruits and vegetables, and your gut is really, your microbiome is in order, how is it that one can catch this virus? How is it that you can get sick if your immune system is strong?
Well, we don't know how, a dysregulated immune system can come about from various things. A lack of sleep is probably one of the major factors. Not dealing with stress is a major factor. If you don't have love in your life, it can be a major factor. If you've got nutrient deficiencies, it can be a factor. There are so many factors that affect your immune system is affected by everything. if you're not exercising, you're not moving. So, and, sometimes things happen. You can't, life is complicated. I hate to put blame on anything. And the best we can do is do our best. But one of the ways to do our best is to also have compassion. So I do think it's harder in this day and age to stay healthy, because all our default choices go against us. Like you talked about your sleep. It's hard in this culture to have a good sleep habits. It's hard in this culture to get healthy food. It's hard in this culture because we've got so much stress. Women in particular are working full time. They've got kids. So there are many, many factors. There's not enough community. Community is really supportive to our health and to our immune system. So there are so many factors that affect our health. So the idea is to remove as much as possible that could be harming you, and add or supplement the things that you don't have enough of in your life. And that could be love, could be sun, it could be certain vitamins, it could be anything. You need to look at the big picture. And this is what we do in functional medicine. We look to see what each individual is lacking, or what they're putting into their bodies, or emotionally going on. So you've got to look at the big picture. Everyone's different. There is no one way for everyone.
So bone broth is something that became very popular in the last year. What are your thoughts about that, and the natural antibiotic that is in chicken bone broth, for example?
I love bone broth. I just got Marco Canora of Brodo, is a friend of mine. I just asked him to send me some. I'm a huge fan of bone broth. I have bone broth a lot. In fact, sometimes in the morning, I break my fast with bone broth or coffee. But I'm a big fan of bone broth. And you can now get, go to brodo.com. He makes the most delicious bone broth, and it gets sent to you. So I'm a huge fan. I mean, that's chicken soup. You use the bones afterwards, and all the nutrients from the bones go into the liquid. So I'm a huge, huge fan of bone broth. A bigger fan of bone broth than juices.
So people are asking about IBS again, and heartburn and different things like that, which Dr. Frank Lippmann spoke about earlier. And they're asking about recommendations for functional medicine doctors. You can log on to drfranklippman.com, Lipman, and he is doing telemedicine now, which is very exciting. So if you need any help with any of these medical issues, you can reach out to him directly. You can also read his stories about all of these things we talked about today. People are asking about a list of spelling of all of these things like quercetin and such. I also included these things in my diary on how the road to recovery during my coronavirus and the things that I took. Having gone through Lyme disease just before this began, and doing everything I could in the sense of eating healthy and taking natural supplements to keep my immune system strong, it was really paramount that I focused on the big picture that you're talking about, the functional medicine picture, and try to do things like yoga every day and get good sleep. But the stress levels were insane, and I was more worried about getting the virus than once I actually got the virus. And I think that really broke down my immune system. All these things attacked the immune system: the stress, the lack of sleep, eating a whole jug of ice cream, which happened one night. I mean, binge eating.
Human. I love ice cream. Yeah, we're human. The most important
but I'm
thing.
lactose intolerant. I'm allergic to a cow, so the fact that I did that was really stupid, but sometimes we make little mistakes like that. So the lead-in is really important. Keep your body really healthy right now. Force yourself to do all these different things that Dr. Lippmann talked about. And if you have questions, you can log on to his website and reach out to him directly, which is so wonderful. A couple more questions, and then we're going to wrap up because I've taken so much of your time already, Dr. Lippmann, and thank you. People are asking about, which is a good question, CBD and hemp oil. That is also something that has become wildly popular in the last few years as it pertains to our health.
I I love CBD oil. I've been using it more and more in my practice. I mainly use it for stress and sleep. You know, once again, you've got to look at the underlying issues and deal with why someone's not sleeping, why you're stressed out. But CBD is a great, you know, and for inflammation, I use it. But I'm a big fan of CBD, and we often start people with sleep problems with CBD. CBD can be really helpful. CBD can also help chill one out. And, you know, the problem with CBD is you've got to find the right dose for you. You've got to find the right strain. Different companies, different CBD company or different CBD strains seem to work differently for different people. So you've got to find what works for you. But I'm a huge fan of CBD.
In terms of sleep and how to achieve it, a lot of people are asking about blue and red light therapy. And does that help with the artificial lighting?
Yeah, I mean, they're probably talking about the orange goggles to protect you from the blue light. Yeah, that can be helpful. I mean, I actually bought a pair years ago, but it was just such a nuisance to wear, so I stopped wearing it. But I think they're getting better and better. The idea is to stop getting that artificial light, that blue light, as much as possible for a good 2 hours before you go to bed. So by protecting, you know, wearing these goggles, that can help.
So I bought these protective things called iJust from iJust, EYEJUST, and I bought them for the phones for
Yes, good.
my
I like that.
teenagers, my phone, my computer as
Yes,
well, and that eliminates some of
yes.
the
Those are
negative effects of the light from your electronics. Those are good, and
yeah. Well, yes, but yeah.
so everybody, a lot of more questions about, we talked about EOE. We talked about, someone was asking if there's a remedy for that. I know that was pre
No,
and
that's
probiotics.
complicated. You've got
All
to
of
look
these
at your diet.
questions, yeah, a lot of these questions we've already talked about. Manuka, ashwanga, mushrooms. Dr. Lippman was praising mushrooms, takes them every day. What specific brand do you like?
Four Sigmatic is good, and there's another. What's the other one? Oh God, I take uh, a mushroom extract by Immunoclinico, but Four Sigmatics I know is a good brand for mushrooms.
And last question, constipation. People are experiencing a lot of that right
Yes,
now. What do you suggest for
yeah,
that?
I'm writing a blog on it because it's so common. Yeah, I mean, you know, moving your body, stop eating the foods, the crap, drinking a lot of water. A probiotic may help. Sometimes apple cider vinegar may help. Digestive enzymes may help. You've got to see why you're constipated. SIBO can cause it. So sometimes taking these herbal antibiotics, herbal antimicrobials can help. You've got to see, and some yoga poses can help. So it's a multifactorial issue. Once again, you've got to address why, the different possible causes of constipation, but it seems to be more common now. I think it's because of what we're eating and we're not as mobile.
What about olive oil? Spoonful
Love
of olive oil.
love olive oil. You just got to know you're getting decent olive oil because there's so much fake olive oil. But olive oil is, I put
What
it to,
olive oil should one be avoiding?
so, well, you want extra virgin olive oil, and then you want good brands. I think I did write a blog. It's in my book, How to Be Well. Did we write a blog for you guys on? Did Emily and I
Yes.
write?
Yes.
Yeah,
Colavita is a good brand. Extra
Colavita's good.
virgin.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
one of
I
them.
love
Yeah,
that one.
yeah.
So many questions that are recurring. We answered SIBO. We talked about
Okay,
all the
last question.
supplements.
Last question. I need to go.
And I think that's it. I see you've answered all of these questions,
Great.
so many, and thank you so much, Dr. Lippman. We appreciate all of your medical expertise. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, drfranklippman.com, go onto his website where you can read more about all these things and the correct spelling for everything. And he's also doing telemedicine.
Thank you, everyone. and be
Thank you,
kind to
Dr.
yourself.
Lippman.
Bye. Great,
I'll be going
great
to
to
bed
see
early
you.
tonight.
Bye.
Goodbye.